Welcome to Uncensored Conservatism. This is episode 258, the Constitutional Convention of 1787. We will continue discussion of the admission of new states. After considerable discussion, it is the position of Maryland that land ceded to the country through the Treaty of Paris to the west of the Appalachian Mountains rightfully belongs to the government of the United States, not the states of Virginia, North Carolina, or Georgia, respectively. As the clause stands now, they belong to these states, and a division of these lands lies solely at the discretion of these states. So you're proposing that these lands can simply be cut into new states by the national government without the say of the existing states. So let's think about this for a second, shall we? First, let's forget about Vermont. I doubt those people want any part of New York, New Hampshire, or Quebec. They will eventually join the Union as a state. Now, as to the others, it is well established when we were under colonial rule that these lands rightfully belong to the states of Virginia, North Carolina, and Georgia. These states have since administered that land. Their people now are headed there to settle that land. And the only thing preventing more settlement is the swamps in the western stretches of Georgia and the Indians to the north of those swamps. Let's take the case of Georgia. Their laws apply there. Their militia protects the settlers there. But now you propose that these states relinquish control and ownership of these lands for the federal government to cut them up and do with as they wish. In Virginia, they may eventually let the Kentucky Territory go. Administration across the mountains is difficult. Well, I can only speak for North Carolina, and we face the same problems as Virginia. We find it difficult to extend our laws across the mountains and protect the settlers there. We may likely at some point set the western counties free. However, we will never just cede that land to the national government to do as they please, so just leave well enough alone. The admission of new states is a national issue crying for a national solution. However, we are changing the rules in the middle of the game. It has long been recognized that these lands belong to these particular states, and they should remain so. The national government should never be granted the power suggested by Maryland, the power to cut up states. Well, perhaps the better word should be, the legislature shall have the power to admit other states into the Union, and new states to be formed by the division or junction of states now in the Union with the consent of the legislatures of such states. That would take care of the situation with Vermont and may allay the fears of some of these other states. Sherman's proposal fails 6-5. No, because we still have the problem of Vermont with those words. But if, say, hereafter formed after shall, we recognize that New York has no claim to Vermont and does not need Albany's permission to join the Union. The amended motion then passed 9-2. In another context, when we were talking about states, they were the ghosts of political societies. Now that the shoe is on the other foot, suddenly these states are not ghosts but are sacrosanct. These states have already said they cannot administer these lands with their laws. Who do you think will extend the law there and protect the settlers? It will be the national government, and they should fall under national jurisdiction. Now, the correct wording is, the legislature of the United States shall have the power to erect new states within as well as without the territory claimed by the several states or either of them, and admit the same into the Union, provided that nothing in this Constitution shall be construed to affect the claim of the United States to vacant lands ceded to them by the late Treaty of Peace. This leaves the territories to the north and west of the Ohio River alone and addresses only the territories to the south of the river. This motion then failed 9-2, and the motion of Morris was then approved 8-3. There's still one potential problem. Suppose Vermont enters as a state and later wants to join with New Hampshire to form a new, unique state. Both would be states in the Union, and if the legislatures of both states agreed to this union along with approval by the National Congress, the better clause would also include, nor shall any state be formed by the junction of two or more states or parts thereof, without the consent of the legislatures of such states, as well as the legislature of the United States. This motion then passed 11-0. About administration of these lands and their defense and internal insurrections. I believe the national government should have wide latitude here. Look at the case of Rogue Island. On the clause as amended. All right. Well, passes 11-0. Then on to Article 19, which states, on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the states in the Union for an amendment of this Constitution, the legislature of the United States shall call a convention for that purpose. I don't really have a problem with this, but I don't see the necessity of having 2/3 of the states calling for a convention. Why can't Congress just do it themselves? I suggest they be given that ability if 2/3 of both houses so Congress concur. Okay, with those words added, how do we vote? Whoa, another 11-0 victory. Now, Article 20, about taking an oath to the Constitution. Yeah, at this point, I have to insist there be no religious tests to serve in this government. These disgusting tests and oaths were imported here from Great Britain. I mean, Delaware, you demand an oath to the Holy Trinity. In North Carolina, bans atheists and Catholics from public service. I don't think this is necessary. The liberal nature of the Constitution assumes what you suggest. Oh, really? Can Connecticut deny that they have a state religion as we speak? I mean, that's the ultimate religious test, right? On a provision against religious tests, how do we vote? 9-1, it passes. Article 21, the ratification of the conventions of blank states shall be sufficient for organizing this Constitution. Since 7 is a majority of 13, perhaps 7 states. We must consider that some states will not ratify this. I believe New York would be troublesome in this area. The current articles require 13 states to make changes. We all know the problems with that. We can't expect all 13 states to immediately ratify anything. So 13 is realistic, and a mere 7 states is too small. Maybe 10 states. That's reasonable, but we may be setting the standard too high. To get things passed in the current Congress, it takes 9 states. People are familiar with that number. I have a question about the mechanics of this thing. Does the current Congress have to approve this plan? And if a state does not ratify, are they severed from the Union? Well, as I understand it, the current Congress gave this convention wide latitude in fixing the articles. As for severance from the Union, if ratified by a certain number of states, it would go into effect against all the states. Oh, as I understand things, I would suspect that it affects only the states that ratify it. Then 9 states should vote for ratification for it to go into effect. If we put the number any higher, then 2 or 3 states would be obnoxiously reluctant. That gives too much power to the likes of New York and Rogue Island. You're effectively killing the Confederation. It takes 13 states to do that, and it should take 13 states to ratify. Gentlemen, we're adjourned. With regards to ratification, I think we should clear up the question presented by Mr. Dickinson yesterday. It should apply only to the states that ratify, no matter the number. Why should this new Congress care about states that refuse to ratify or are reluctant? So if it's 9 states to ratify, and these 9 states send people to Congress, and they take up the nation's business, why should they be concerned about a state that is holding out, like New York? How about at least 7 states with at least 33 representatives? This is just getting silly and complicated. Come on. We're sending a bad message to the states and assume bad faith in them. Rogue Island. New York, we're well past the stage of bad faith, sir. About this convention thing, why can't the states choose their own method of ratification? Do we mistrust legislatures and governors that much? In Maryland, our state constitution specifies the state legislature must call a convention if anything affects our state constitution, as this thing clearly does. I think we should leave conventions in there. The legislatures will put up roadblocks in the path of ratification. Conventions are the best method of ratification. The national government will take some powers away from them, and they will guard those powers with jealousy. The people should hold the possibility of a new government in their hands. But officers in Maryland take an oath to our state constitution. You are now asking them to break that oath. Oh man, I can't believe we're having this discussion. King and Madison just explained why conventions are necessary, and Maryland comes along and says, we can't do that. It would violate our state constitution. So just stop at the excuses. You see why now? Any state legislature will simply do what you're doing now. Why do you have such a fear of people? Why do you have a fear of the state legislatures? If we call for this convention in Maryland and the people are on one side and the legislature on the other side, it would cause an upheaval in society. I don't have a fear of the people, Pinckney, because the people of Maryland will never ratify this piece of crap. Every state constitution that I've examined has some means to alter their constitutions. In Massachusetts, it even mandates a convention in 1790 in anticipation of changes. The fact Luther Martin and his Maryland cronies are sitting here today is also proof that your state constitution can be altered. After a succession of votes, 9 states to ratify was agreed to, 8-3. Now, for the record, so that those dopes in Maryland understand, because they don't know how to read up there. Can you state what we just agreed to, Mr. Jackson? That it requires 9 states to ratify the Constitution. That ratification will be by the people at a convention in their respective states. That no state is entitled to representation until they do ratify, and that the Constitution will be binding on all 13 states. Can I move on now? For Article 22, the Constitution shall be laid before the United States and Congress assembled for their approval, and it is the opinion of this convention that it should be afterwards submitted to a convention chosen under the recommendation of its legislature in order to receive the ratification of such convention. Get rid of the part about their approval. This motion passed 8-3. There is still unfinished business. I would like those issues resolved before I agree to anything. At this point, I'd rather cut off my right hand than sign this document. The entire article as amendment then passed 7-4. Well, one would hope these ratifying conventions would have the ability and power to alter and amend the proposed Constitution, but I suppose it's all or nothing. And it pains me to say that I share the sentiments of Mr. Mason. I understand that Mr. Sherman has a report on some unfinished business. To clear up some ambiguity regarding commerce, we agreed to this change. Nor shall any regulation of commerce or revenue give preference to the ports of one state over those of another. The clause passes 11-0. Also, in that respect, or oblige vessels bound to or from any state to enter, clear, or pay duties in another. Now, this imposes a hardship on states. If a ship is bound for Philadelphia, where does the jurisdiction of Pennsylvania begin? Well, look what's happening in New Jersey. Ships bound for New York are offloaded in Sandy Hook, then smuggled into New York. The clause then passed 9-2. As for unresolved issues, we urge formation of a committee. This was approved and named the Committee of Undone Business, and they adjourned. After initial consultation, the committee would like to report that the following words be inserted. The members of each house shall be ineligible to any civil office under the authority of the United States for the time for which they shall respectively be elected, and no person holding an office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. Also, that a uniform code of bankruptcy throughout the country should be congressional power. We also propose the following words. Full faith and credit ought to be given in each state to the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state, and the legislature shall, by general laws, prescribe the manner in which such acts, records, and proceedings shall be proved, and the effect which judgments obtained in one state shall have in another. And that's it for now. Seriously? That's all you came up with? Oh, give us a friggin' break, Martin. It's been less than 24 hours, and we achieved more in that time than we have in the past month when your lips are flapping around all the time. All right, already. Listen, there's still work to be done by this committee. It's Saturday, and we have no more business before us, so let's start the weekend early. We are adjourned.